Dexter on the one.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Sound perfect.
Turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around. No, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let discrimination turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Gonna let discrimination turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom.
Welcome everybody to WeBelieveDigital.com and the Sizzling in Mississippi show, where myself, Chris Young, and my co-host, my auntie, Joan Prim.
Yes.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing good, and we're going to kick off. This is our last show of our trial unit that we told you about. We did have some technical difficulties last night, and we certainly apologize for that. We weren't able to put the show out last night, but other than that, so this, I guess, will be the 8th show in the last 9 weeknights. And we want to sit back and think a little bit over the holidays about how things have been going and what you feel about the show, what your thoughts are, and take a look at the data, and then we'll kind of proceed, decide where we go from there. And as usual, tonight we're joined in the studio by our production team, and that's Mr. Dexter Morgan and Miss Ariel G. And very glad to have them here. We could not do the show without them, and so we're very grateful for that. And we have a couple of guests tonight, and we and in just a second I'm going to introduce them. But I just remind you that to follow the show, to click the subscribe button so that you get your notifications of when the show's coming up, and to like the show and share it with your friends. And what we're finding is that a certain amount of people view the show live, but far more people end up viewing the show after the fact. So, everybody's got busy schedules and all that kind of stuff. So the show's available and archived on YouTube and on Facebook, and very shortly will be up on our newly reconstructed WeBelieveDigital.com website. So we appreciate you following the show, and let us know what you think. Give us your sincere feedback so we can do something with it. And Maati, do you any thoughts before we move on to our guest tonight? Did you have anything on the front of mind you wanted to share, or before we get rolling with our guests?
Well, I took the time and finally visited the Civil Rights Museum over the weekend.
Yes.
Yes.
And? It was kind of a pause there.
Right. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. Yeah.
You were not enthralled?
I can't say I was. We should always remember that black is a proper noun, and the B should be capitalized. Mm-hmm. And we'll have another show, and we can go further in that at another time.
Well, that's the thing that your foundational thought that you.
That's the shortest one.
That's telling you something.
Yes.
That is really
yes,
telling you something.
Yes.
Well, very good, very good. Well, and I think it was the Kellogg Foundation that sponsored. Everybody could go over there free over the weekend, so that was nice.
That was good.
Did you go next door to the Museum of Mississippi History?
No, I did not.
I never have either.
Yeah, I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, same thing. So well, very good, very good. And we see Chantel G joining us on the chat. Thank you, Chantel. And please let me take a minute to introduce our guests that are going to be with us for this first segment. Two terrific people. I met Miss Shy Jackson just a couple of weeks ago, and meeting Mr. Wainsley for the first time tonight. But on my left, on the viewer's right hand side, is Miss Shy Jackson. How are you doing tonight, Shy?
I'm doing exceptionally well. How are you doing, Chris?
Never had it so good. You know, the glasses just always half full.
All right.
Yeah.
So one ship bait to another one.
That's right. That's right.
Right,
That old Navy connection.
Yes.
And on my right, so on the viewer's left-hand side, we have Mr. Carl Wainsley. Welcome to We Believe Digital, Mr. Wainsley.
Thank you, Chris, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're so glad that you're here. And, you know, Chantel, pardon me, Shy brought you to my attention, you know, as an author of a book. And we've got a couple of copies of the book out here. I don't know if it is, they might be a little bit too low for the camera level, but we've got a couple of copies of the book out here. Thank you, Dexter. Would you like to share with us about the book, or let us know, you know, about you and about your book?
Sure, I would love to. The book is titled Journey into Manhood, and it is a autobiography of my life. I had I guess, very colorful and interesting childhood. At the age of 16, I was sentenced to death by the gas chamber, Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman. At that time, I was the youngest person ever sentenced to die, to be killed in the Mississippi gas chamber. It was my first crime ever, and as it turned out, thank God, it was my last crime ever. I did 3 years on death row, 11 years total in Parchman, before I was paroled in 1986. It was very interesting, terrifying, horrifying, sometimes humorous, believe it or not, encounter. But I learned a lot. Because I went to penitentiary so early, I was still developing. And I think it was that developmental stage and that youthful stage is mainly the reason that I survived, of course, by the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and I've often asked, especially early in my incarceration, how did this happen to me? I was the type of child, a young person that parents would point at and say, hey, tell their kids, you need to be more like her. I loved going to school. I loved learning. I loved going to church. When the mean boys would go out and do their things, I would, casually go home. And this was the child who ended up on death row in the 9th grade. Before my graduation, I was voted most likely to succeed out of my 9th grade class. And a year later, I was on death row. And I wrote this book after years of prayer and years of thinking about it and years of being encouraged to write, because this is one of the most devastating and shameful moments in my history. But people kept telling me that, man, your story can help others. Mm-hmm. And I finally came to the belief that my past could be my greatest asset, especially for others. And when I see what's going on in the communities today, every time you turn on the TV, every time you turn on the television, there's something else, some young person, some gun crime. What are we going to do about these kids? So I finally talked it over with my wife, and I decided that it was time to try. And I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. I hear people saying, well, if you can just help one, you've done good. I want to help more than one. The factors that led to my incarceration, I remember the first time I spoke with a psychiatrist, I really didn't want to be bothered with her. And she would say, well, Carl, tell me about yourself. And I said, well, I went in the store, I commit. She said, no, I'm not interested in what happened. I can read about that. She said, I'm more interested in the factors that would make a 16-year-old walk in a store and commit murder. And that got me to thinking, maybe that's something I should look at. So after years of going back over my life, doing a personal and moral inventory of myself, I began to try to identify those factors that actually would make a 16-year-old like I was at that time. Because I said, I was a perfect kid almost. I loved school and everything. But when I began to look at the factors and I see what's going on in society now, I identify some of those same factors with some of these young people that affected me, and I see the same results. So I decided to write this book. Hopefully we can, get them to understand some things about their lives before it's too late.
And the book was published in 2019.
Yes.
And you had to self-publish.
Yes.
And where can people find the book?
The book is on Google Play or Google Books.
Okay.
Because I self-publish, I'm the only person right now who has softback copies. But I do have an email address that if the person wanted a softback copy, they could email me, and I would make sure that they got one.
Would you be comfortable putting the email address out on the air or no?
I would. It's MAARIFUL0
One more time.
MAARIFUL0 @yahoo.com.
FUL0 @yahoo.com. Very good. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing so fully and not holding things back and telling your story. I'm really delighted that we're doing this tonight, that you get to hear this story told. And Shy,
Yes.
what is your connection to Mr. Wainsley? I mean, we had a little talk before.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're connected to this book. I know you're connected to a little bit to marketing. But would you share, how it came to be that you met Mr. Wainsley?
Well, I'm a counselor by trade. Went into business for myself, Baby House LLC, and my motto is, I am my brothers, my sister keepers. And at the time at WNPR, I had a show there. And he heard one of the shows I've done, so George, one of the DJs, he got in contact with me saying, hey, he saw you on YouTube, and, he wanted to know, can he meet you in person? And so I had no problem with it, because again, I like to be out in the community working. One of the things that we can hide behind our degrees, but what are we actually doing for the people? Mm-hmm. So me and Mr. Waynes, we met, and so for this year, I was like, well, hey, I'm looking for, I want to do more. I want to be able to help more than just sell your books. I want to be able to touch people. How can we do that? And doing things different. So we sat down and talked. Fatima, she's over Youth Talk, another part of the production that I do with us coming together for the business. So coming up in April this year, we're going to produce this. We want to make this into not really like another show, but a different platform to where people can log on, or those that on the Baby House platform can actually sit down and talk to the author to go deeper. Mm-hmm. And because of having that counseling background, because we need to drop behind our mask, we need to quit trying to strip down the makeup, strip down the imperfections that we have, and think about this. He was 16 years old when this happened, regardless of what the different backgrounds we come from, we still need to help. So, it's very deep. So Carl and I decided to first, let's how are we going to do this? And so to be honest, it was just like, hey, the story needs to be heard, but in a way that's going to reach everybody.
Wonderful. And so you're still ironing that out in terms of putting a program together.
Oh, we already got it together.
Oh, you got it
It's
together.
going to be premiered in April. It's going to be through StreamYard, and hopefully be able to work out some other things to get it to actually a home, so we can actually to take that platform to reach out. Still some other things that I know we're going to do.
Very good. And who knows, maybe even on We Believe Digital.
Yes, that would be nice. And also, too, because we have fans that's over in Lagos, Africa, those that's over in Belgium, that's another thing. I didn't know that I wanted to do something different, to try canceling other airwaves, and so didn't know it was going to be well received.
Yeah.
So this is like I'm very excited, but I'm ready.
Monty?
I was just wondering, yes, what were some of the factors that contributed to your incarceration?
One of the main factor, I think, is parental neglect, neighborhood neglect. There's an old saying, African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. I was left after the death of my mother to raise myself. I used to counsel with young people, speak to young people at youth detention centers, and their stories are basically the same. My mother's not there, my father is not there, no uncles, no aunts, no one is taking care of me. I'm learning to take care of myself, and I'm a firm believer in the cultural transmission theory. Our behavior is determined by the society in which we live. And if we think about the society that these young people are coming up in now, they're raising themselves. And that was one of the things I had, I think that was really a main factor in me going down, choosing the path that I chose. There was no one there. My mother died. My father was an alcoholic. We did manage to reconcile our differences before he passed. But when we neglect our young people, what do we expect children to do? I mean, my daughter's 17 right now. If I left her completely on her own, baby, I'm not going to pay any bills. I'm not going to buy any food for you. I'm not going to get any clothes for you. What is she going to look like in 4 years, 5 years from now? Now, right now, she's an A student. But what will she be like when she get out into a world that she doesn't understand, like I had to do, and you try to make it in an adult world and you're a child? So many avenues are closed to you.
Right.
And when people see what's going on and don't lend a hand, then we can expect these type of things to happen. Years later, I had some of the people, adults in the neighborhood who were adults at the time, told me, well, Carl, we saw what was going on. I mean, you come home from school, all your furniture's out in the yard because you've been evicted, your father's nowhere around. We saw these things, and I asked them now because I had a voice then, why didn't you help?
What did they reply?
There was no answer.
Yeah.
There was no answer.
We've got about another 3 minutes before we hit the break. Did you have any more questions or?
What do you do now as far as counseling children?
I'm part of a 12-step program now where I deal with young people, adults as well. I have made attempts. I was a part of a program in Parchment called Project Aware, and we came out and talked to young people. I was in very popular demand in Project Aware. 4 years ago, several years ago before I wrote the book, I went to every school in Jackson, and I had come to these schools, the same schools in Jackson when I was incarcerated, in high demand. When I was released and went to these schools to volunteer my time to speak to the young people, not one school allowed me in to speak. There were no cameras this time. There were no photo ops this time. It was just one individual trying to help young people. So I was not invited. I even took a copy down to the superintendent.
Okay.
So
It didn't seem to make a difference.
No.
No.
So we have to be willing to, get involved. They're children. If you go to the youth detention center and look at them without the guns, okay, you'll see these are just children. These are babies trying to raise themselves.
Okay.
And you've had other opportunities where I think we've mentioned something about YouTube before. Have you got stuff out on YouTube now?
I have not because I am a classic procrastinator.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, but I have been. It has been suggested to me on numerous occasions. I'm not very technical today, and I guess I've reached that age where I need a kid now, and now my baby's gone, so I can't do it. And well, I could if I put forth the effort, but yes, I've thought about doing that, and it's been suggested for me.
It seems like more and more there's people that are sort of poking around that issue of more parental influence. But boy, oh boy, it seemed like that's an uphill struggle.
It is. Well, and not everyone, but too many of the people that I deal with in the environment where I am, a lot of them have no parental supervision. Either the father's incarcerated, The mother's incarcerated. One or both are on drugs or alcohol, addicted to some substance. So the children are left alone. I had a young man I talked with for a while. His mother was a crack addict, and he had a 12-year-old and I think 8-year-old sister. And I asked him, man, why are you doing the things you do? He said, man, somebody has to feed them.
Right, right. Well, we're delighted to have had you guys here today. The time just flies. We're
Yes,
up
it
at
does.
the 20-minute mark already. It doesn't seem like it, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for
so
having
much.
us.
Thank you for having
Thanks for
us.
having us.
You know, and did you have a contact info you'd like to put out to any of our listeners?
No, not right now.
Okay.
That's right
Okay.
now. But we do want people to know that thank you guys for having us on your show. This is a breaking the ice introduction to let them know of the information of what's to come.
Yes.
So I want to thank you guys for having us.
Very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And viewers, will be right back with you after a couple of commercials.
Let's read and learn together. Meet Mason. Written by Sherry Tate. Illustrated by David. Mason is a young, inspired learner. Walk with him as he uses his 5 senses to explore the world around him. Your young one can learn to identify shapes, numbers, letters, and more with Meet Mason. Available now on Amazon.com.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
SocratesGarrettENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
And welcome back. Welcome back to Sizzling in Mississippi, Black Woman and White Man at the Crossroads. That was really nice to have Shy Jackson and Mr. Carl Wainsley with us. It's not every day you get to hear a story like that and be able to share that with so many viewers. So we're very grateful for that. And we're on our final leg right now where, I guess I kind of feel a certain way about that.
Yeah, me too.
We promised on our very first night when we came on the air, and Mati being so gracious to join this old gray-haired, fat-bellied white man up here on this, and try to chop things up a little bit, try to talk about things that are real, and try to do our part, if you will, in some way, trying to move this needle of equality in a positive direction in Mississippi. That's really what we're trying to do, and so here we are on the last night of our 9-day run, and we're going to take a little break, and I think it's very strong possibility that we'll be back with you in January. We may have to adjust some times. We may shift from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. We may, who knows how this is going to turn out. But anyway, I feel strongly like we'll be back with you, but certainly we'll put out a notification no matter what. And we just had a couple of thoughts for this last, we talked about, the last time we talked about the difference, you articulated the difference between organizers and activists.
Right.
So one thing we didn't quite get to, or if we did, I'm not remembering it, is that what about in the modern day? Do you see anyone, Mati, in the modern day today that would be a good example of in either category of an organizer or an activist?
Certainly. There's many activists, and those who are most pure of heart receive very little attention.
So the ones that are doing what get the most attention?
Well, the non-grassroots.
Okay.
Yeah, people who are in the streets and looking and taking care of elders and our babies and making sure that they're okay, and doing minor food drives that don't get a lot of advertisements, but they just go from, asking people that they know to contribute, and it goes from that hand to the person who's in need. And of course,
Service.
that works very well because, if you, unfortunately, the larger charitable organizations have such overhead.
Takes sometimes I've seen crazy numbers like over 30% of the money that they get goes to overhead.
At least, yeah. Sometimes it's just 30% that actually goes to people in need.
The actual cause.
Yes. So with community activists, they go from hand to hand, passing it through. They're not interested really in becoming wealthy through this process.
Yeah.
They're just interested in results. And so there's a lot of people like that.
Now, here in Jackson, and not the I don't want anybody, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but I did notice even before I moved to Jackson, as I researched more and more and more about what was going on in the city, I saw the People's Advocacy Institute. Would you consider that an organizing activity or more of an activist?
More of an activist.
Okay.
Right.
And-
They're grassroots. They're still dealing with the people.
Yeah.
Right. On a direct level.
Right.
Right.
So they'll take publicity, but they're going to be doing what they're doing whether the publicity comes or not.
Right. Regardless.
And they hopefully do try to get the attention of some funders, people that can separate the wheat from the chaff.
Sure.
And be able to support the
Right.
efforts that they're involved with.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's well placed. And it's not, going to overhead, but it's going to the people in need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's an event. It could be an event of theirs tonight or something.
It
that
is.
I
Yeah.
missed.
At the at Greater Mount Sinai Missionary Baptist Church on Bailey from 6 until 8 this evening.
6 until 8. So
Right.
anyway, well, very good. Another another topic that I kind of came about. I watched the different behaviors with elected leaders, and then of course you see the people spewing white nationalist ideals and propaganda, and you see the white supremacist groups. You say I'm remembering what was that going on out in Idaho? I don't know. Was it could have been a gay pride event or something like that, and they had like 17 people go out there to try to disrupt the white nationalists, and so anyway, somehow or another, the thought came in my mind. Well, how do you push back against these people that think that this country is their country, and that no one else matters, no one else levels up to them in their minds? Of course, we know that's not true, but in their minds. And so the topic of what do those oppressors, if you will, what do they hate the most? What bothers them the most when people attempt to push back against them? And so I thought we could talk about that a little bit. And do you have thoughts on that?
Well, sure. I mean, theirs is a fear of a loss of power.
Amen. Yeah.
When you lose power, you lose everything. You lose wealth. You lose the ability to choose.
That's the common denominator of everything they're doing. Fear.
Right. It's fear-based.
Fear of losing
Right.
how they view their place.
Right. Well, their fear of losing their way of life. You know, that's something that was stated by different white nationalist groups for ages. You know, in the 50s and in the 60s, they always talk about fear of losing their way of life. And their way of life is for them to be at the top and others to be at the bottom. And they're quite content with that. But they're not content with anything that they may see as a challenge to their authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I poked into it a little bit, and
Okay.
one of the things that really cracked me up,
Yes.
you know how when you do the, you know, my youngest daughter, you know, just mandated that I that I do the 23andMe
Okay.
situation, you know,
Yes.
and I think there was saliva involved in putting it in the mail or something like that.
Sure.
And anyway, one of the things that I found out is like a divisive point with these folks is when they find out that their true identity,
Yeah.
just like you're saying identity,
Yeah.
when they find out that their true identity is not pure white,
Okay.
pure European.
Okay.
Well, how many people, do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
So it's almost like they lose some of their potency,
Sure.
but yet they find accommodations. They find accommodations for people that are only a little bit, have only a small percentage sub-Saharan Africa
Right.
and other non-white, you know, areas of the world. That just.
Right.
It just, you know, the idea of anything being absolute in this world that we live in is just,
Well, I mean, the problem is that if a person lives their life with a certain identity,
Yeah.
thinking that they're 100% European and that European somehow does not flow back to Africa, you know, they're satisfied with that. But once they find out that it does, then what do they do with it? If everybody can point to the original mother as the original woman who was a black woman, Deshnet, who is called many times Lucy, but nicknamed Lucy, but she's Deshnet. And to think that we all come from her, you know, can be unsettling for
It's too
somebody.
much.
Yeah, for
It's too
someone
much for them.
practicing identity politics. Yes.
and you know, in fact, it was just, I just can't recall the article or where it came from, but I was reading something or listening to a news program or something where they talked about altering DNA. And you know, now I'm thinking about that in the context of this discussion.
Okay.
Isn't it interesting? You know, isn't it interesting when we hear things and we stop and step back and ask ourselves, who gave us that narrative?
Right.
Because often what we find out is that narratives are generated to do just exactly what these white supremacists want to do,
Okay.
to keep these white nationalists maintain some sort of power. And so, I don't want anybody fiddling with the DNA. Let's just leave it the way it is, because what we find out is, say her name again?
Deshnet.
Deshnet?
Yes.
Deshnet. We find out so many people go back to Deshnet.
Yes.
You know, something else I saw in looking at putting together this list and researching a lot of different sources, you know, another thing these people hate is the removal of symbols. Oh, when you have these statutes, monuments. I know Richmond, Virginia, just this week is in the process of moving the final and there were remains under that one.
Yeah.
I think it was the General A.P. Hill monument in the main thoroughfare there in Richmond, Virginia, but people get crazy when you talk about removing these Confederate monuments.
Well, if they move to
Symbols.
Mississippi, they don't have to worry about that.
We got plenty of them here.
We have plenty of them, and it's been stated that they will not be moved.
It surprised me they don't amend the mission of the Capitol Police and dispatch troopers to watch over those monuments.
Right. Well, no one's attacking them yet. So
Just yet.
I guess,
Just yet.
Yeah.
When people want to do something about mass incarceration in this country, guess who complains about that? When there's interfaith rallies, marches, rallies, Black Lives Matter, things like that, the white supremacists and the white nationalists, they don't like that stuff. Symbols of past deeds, like with the Emmett Till marker.
Yes.
Now, having a much longer history than I do in Mississippi, how often was that marker defaced? I'm not talking about the new statue, but
right. The marker.
and
Right.
you've been there.
Right. I have several times.
Yeah.
And it's been defaced countless times. I don't know if anyone even has an actual count on it.
They put
Yeah.
they put nasty stuff on it, and they've
shoot
shot
it.
at it.
Yeah.
Full of bullet markings.
Right.
So that's a thing, and of course, when they see areas where black people are in positions of power and authority, that gets these people really, really upset. So you find a black mayor like we have in Jackson, or a black governor like we definitely don't have in Mississippi. Congressmen, senators. I called over yesterday to Benny Thompson's office, local office, and just thought I could ask a benign question. And as soon as I said the word podcast, I was told I got to call Washington, D.C. and talk to the media people.
Okay.
But we know from past media reports that Congressman Thompson has received many, many death threats
Right.
upon his life.
Right.
And the main focus of that is because just so happens that he's black. So interesting.
Well, see, I always say it this way. I don't say that Congressman Benny Thompson receives threats because he's black. Because if I go back thousands of years, it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. He was in Africa, his people were in Africa, and there was no threats. There was no anti-black sentiments.
But because he's here.
Right. Well, because he's surrounded by racists, and he works within a system of global white supremacy is the reason why he's receiving threats.
Yeah. And the most recent one was a very young, I think 19, 20, 21-year-old sent an envelope. He said, "I'm going to kill you," and it had white powder in there, which they later found was innocuous.
Yeah.
But the one before that was right in the Medgar Evers office, and was a 66-year-old black man who was unhappy with him for some reason, and
Yeah.
so.
Well, there's mental illness.
Yeah.
So.
Being outed, that's another. I think we got, let's see, about another 7 minutes or so. The being outed, that's why the Klan ran around in hoods, right?
Right.
So they
could have a feeling of being concealed, and so
protect their identity.
Protect their identity. Of course, they would go in absolute numbers.
Yeah.
They're going after one black person, and there's 5 to 10 or more of them for one black person, because they want to make sure that they outnumber their victim.
Yeah.
So that they can be successful and unharmed.
And anything you do to try to limit the activities of these folks, of these white supremacists, anything you try to do to limit their activity of agitation, hatred, or whatever, boy oh boy, they don't like that. They'll start screaming about their rights. while they're ready at a moment's notice to infringe on other people's rights,
Right.
that they've died to have these rights, and these people won't hesitate a minute to infringe upon their rights. But when you try to stop them and their behavior, they get hog wild crazy.
Well, it comes down to interpretation. You know, what is your filter? If your filter is white supremacy, then the law has a different meaning for some than it does for others.
Amen. And theories and or information that paint a truer picture of our history. Oh, we can't have that.
Right.
That was one of the first things we talked about on this show. I think the first or second night we brought up the CRT bill.
Right.
And
which doesn't mention critical race theory, by the way.
Doesn't mention it at all, except in the title. And I would encourage people. I mean, it's only about 18 pages, to read the initial essay by Hannah Nicole Jones relating to the 1619 Project. It's only about 18 pages of reading, and as they were taking that vote that day, and all the black senators got up and walked out of the room.
Right.
I couldn't help but ask myself, how many of the white folks that wanted to, not all of them, fortunately, but the Republicans there, that the vast majority, I've got the statistics on my wall at my office, but how many of them have actually read those 18 pages, are even open-minded enough to stop and read those,
Well, I mean, I always want to go beyond 1619. 1619 only talks about, that is actually not the start of captivity for black people in America.
You've told me that. I remember you telling me that.
Right. And this is just English-speaking Europeans that came into this process.
Yeah.
And that's 1619. But, you have the Portuguese and the Dutch and others. So
And
it's
southern,
really not...
southern, what's now Florida, right?
Right.
Or Sarasota, was it?
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine.
Yeah, was a black enclave. But what's far more important is not the history of black people taking it on the chin. What's far more important is to answer the question, what have black people given to civilization? Besides creating civilization, what have black people given to civilization? Because it's not a matter of contribution. It's a matter of actually creating the actual structure. And so if we look at things like astronomy and biology and algebra and trigonometry.
Even medical.
And yes, absolutely.
First
medicine,
heart surgery.
Right. But we can go back thousands of years before to Imhotep and find that 200 blood disorders were determined or identified back in, like 3000 BC by black people in Africa. So when you start looking at that, then you immediately have to ask the question, well, why would we want to come to America? And the truth is, we didn't want to come here.
Yeah. I love the way you frame that up.
Thank you.
I just love that. So we're winding down in the last couple of minutes here. Another thing on that list, really aggravates racist people, white supremacists, white nationalists, when somebody opens up an investigation. So when they open up a police investigation or the military,
congressional investigation.
Department of Justice, right, a civil rights. They do not like that.
No,
they do not like that one little bit. I got a funny thing I came across, and maybe you laugh, maybe you won't, Monty. But Ben and Jerry's.
Yes.
The ice cream people.
Right.
Interesting folks.
Vermont.
Now, I really can't say I'm a patron or anything like that, but I maybe had a little bit of Cherry Garcia for one little point in my life. But they have on their webpage, and this is dated June 5th, 2020, 12 ways you can help eradicate white supremacy. And I thought it was just interesting that they're putting that out.
Okay.
So let's give a little bit. It's just really simple. They partner with the group called Color of Change. They advocate that group. They say listen to the 1619 podcast, vote, financially support groups that are on the front line, encourage white people to talk to other white people about racism. And I see this going on more than I ever have before, with still below a snail's pace.
Right.
But it is happening, I think,
That's
more
what
and
I
more.
told you when we met.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they say to call out racism. They say believe black people and promote their agendas. Watch Brian Stevenson's film called Just Mercy, which was released in the year 2020. And Brian Stevenson is the head of the Equal Justice Initiative over in Montgomery and
Alabama.
Yep, and they say sign up to support a local partner, Vermont for Criminal Justice Reform. Hold companies accountable for continuing to make progress in their internal equity work. Showing up for get involved with a group, a national network, apparently, they say, showing up for racial justice. And lastly, they say this, and maybe this is the thing maybe this is a little something of what we're trying to do here. They say, make yourself uncomfortable. Know that you'll make mistakes. Know that you might say the wrong thing. But make yourself uncomfortable. Commit yourself to this work. Don't stop. Don't be so afraid of making a mistake when you're talking about racial issues that you just stay silent. And so the idea of speaking up and airing your voice and discussing topics that aren't that easy to talk about for a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about these things, and even at this level here, when we know that there's lots and lots and lots more layers below,
Right.
And we can talk about this, and if we can talk about this, other people can talk about it too.
They can. I would add that doing for self, and for black people to quit using the moniker minority,
Okay.
because we never were.
Right. Right.
We're not a minority. We never have been.
Always the majority.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Very interesting. Well, Monty, here we are rolling up on minute 48 and supposed to be wrapping things up. And we definitely see folks in the Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And he's sending definitely a shout out to you on everything that you're saying, Monty. So anything else we want to share with the viewers before we sign off?
I would like to, on the museum tip that we started off with, I would like to see a museum of black victory instead of black suffering.
Wow. Anything like that exist in America that you know of?
No. It may be, and I just don't know it.
Well, it is interesting at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the design of the building
Right.
is small at the base, but as you go up to the different levels, it gets broader and broader and broader, and that conveys a certain message.
Right.
So maybe there's a little bit of that, but that would be nifty, especially
Yes.
to have that here.
Wow.
Oh, that would be glorious.
Yes.
Well, we thank you so much for joining us. We thank you so much for engaging in the conversation, the chat online, and we won't see you back. We wouldn't be back before the beginning of the new year, and so we wish everybody happy holidays, whatever your choice is. If it's Christmas, if it's Kwanzaa, if it's is it Rosh Hashanah?
No.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
let's see.
That one.
Yeah.
That one.
Well, Hanukkah.
Well, Hanukkah.
Yes,
Hanukkah. Thank you.
Yes.
And any others just just hit me kind of at the last minute to.
My brain just took a
Yeah.
vacation. It's already out the door.
It's all right. Hey, our holiday's already started. But thank you so much, people, and thank you again to our producers for doing the work behind the scenes to make this show possible. And we'll see where we go from there. And thank you so much. And have a good evening. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
Turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking on the freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, no, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around.